Yes, as your reporting noted at the top there, there have been four successful coups in Niger's history since its independence. But I think that one important factor to note here is that uh, Niger had recently been on a strongly democratizing trajectory. In fact, the last coup to take place took place in 2010 and was actually intended to resolve a political deadlock that was sparked by former President Mamadou Tanja and his undemocratic efforts to hang on to power. Tanja sought to extend his time in power by reforming the Constitution and holding a referendum that the Constitutional Court ultimately ruled was illegal. And so he took action to dissolve the courts and dissolve the legislature and rule by decree, at which point the military stepped in to restore democratic rule, constitutional rule, and involved the civilians in a strong transition that ultimately led to a civilian elected regime under Mohamedou Issoufou, the president prior to Mohamed Bazoum. And Issoufou acknowledged his term limits, followed institution and constitutions, and ultimately handed power over when Mohamed Bazoum was elected president just a few years ago. So I think that it's important just to note that democracy is quite strong in Niger. Nigerians have made it clear that they are supportive of democratic institutions and their constitution, and the military here seems to be a little bit out of step with those desires of Nigerian citizens today.
Daniel, very quickly, do we know the state of President Bazoum and his family?
I think at this point what we know, and obviously these things are subject to change as the military is holding him hostage and could choose to move him or release him at any moment, is that as of yesterday he was taken hostage by his presidential guard. That took place at the residence, the presidential palace. His family appears to be with him. Initially, they were able to communicate in some degree. At least his offices were able to get messages out indicating that he was safe and his family was safe. However, he has refused to resign up until now. And so, the army has gotten involved. A wider swath of military members appear to be involved in holding him, detaining him. He appears to still be at the presidential palace, and they appear to be trying to use him as some kind of bargaining chip to gain recognition from a wider set of actors.
Daniel, numerous African countries are going through political upheaval. What should ECOWAS and the African Union do, or how should they respond to this crisis, looking at the case first in Niamey and other countries on the continent?
Yeah, I think this is a really crucial moment. The first few days of any coup, particularly one like this where it seems to be somewhat fluid and uncertain at the start, are really essential for trying to undo its effects. President Bazoum has been resolute in his desire not to resign, and I think that the role of ECOWAS and the African Union are to back him up in that position. They need to continue to condemn the coup leaders, make it clear that they're not going to recognize the coup leaders, and by starving them of recognition, they remove any kind of leverage that these coup leaders have. They're able to hold President Bazoum. That's true. But at the same time, if they can't receive recognition from the wider international community, whether that be regional leaders in West Africa through ECOWAS, or the African continent through AU, or beyond the African continent with partners like the United States, France, and the UN, then there's relatively little that these coup leaders can accomplish. And at that point, I think that you can make it quite clear in the actions that ECOWAS can take that Bazoum needs to be released, that constitutional order needs to be reinstated, and that process can begin to resolve what is ultimately a Nigerian affair and hopefully bring these coup leaders to justice.
Very quickly, Daniel, what seems to be triggering these coups, especially in West Africa? Look at Burkina Faso, Mali, and now we know what's going on in Sudan and Niamey.
Yes, I mean, it's very difficult to pinpoint any particular variable as the source of this instability. I think that when it comes to Niger, we can't not look at its neighbors. We have to look at Mali. We have to look at Burkina Faso. Where successful coups there have put military governments in power. Those military juntas have really failed to address the security concerns that they justified their actions of taking power with. And I think that if the Nigerian soldiers that have staged this coup attempt to justify their actions on security concerns, they're no more likely to improve the situation. And so there's certainly a lot of insecurity, but I think that President Bazoum had been making good progress on addressing it, and this is obviously a huge setback for Niger.
Daniel, many thanks.
Thank you, Esther.
Right. Daniel Eizenga is a research fellow with the Africa Center for Strategic Studies at the National Defense University.